best we can try and do is advise the public on the warnings of this potentially lethal concoction of perhaps it's an ecstasy or a methamphetamine.
Tonight, toxic drugs hit a small town in northern Manitoba.
Halifax's government has never been brought to the table.
Plus, a First Nation in the Yukon wants consultation on an upcoming mine.
Why would somebody do something like this to us?
And a sacred site near Winnipeg is damaged for the second time in just 2 weeks. Good evening, Tansei Aneen. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. A parliamentary committee continues to investigate a toxic spill from the Kearl oil sands mine site in northern Alberta. On Monday, it was the Alberta Energy Regulator's turn to testify before the committee. APTN's Fraser Needham reports.
The impacts on the community,
NDP MP Heather McPherson came to Monday's Environment Committee meeting looking for answers.
Can you tell me, when did you inform any provincial government representative of the seepage that you first learned of in May 2022?
But those answers were not always forthcoming from Alberta Energy Regulator CEO Laurie Pushor.
Well, you know, we do have a review that's being conducted by our board of directors, and so I think it would be best to leave that.
So you can't tell us the date that you let the provincial government know that this was happening?
I think it's best that we let that review be a full independent review, and all of those answers and all of those questions will be addressed in that review, and the board has made a commitment that those findings will be released publicly.
McPherson and Pushor locked horns again over the issue of deep water monitoring. McPherson said Indigenous communities had not been notified of the monitoring by the AER.
In the last round of questioning, I asked you about whether or not Indigenous communities, Mr. Pushor, have been notified of the deep water monitoring that you've been doing. I've been told that they have not been told that. So in fact, you testifying that they have been told and me getting information that they have not seems very, very counter.
Well, Pushor insisted they had.
Let me come back to, you indicated that I had not shared, and I want to correct that. We received a positive test for F2 hydrocarbons in a deep water monitoring well 2 weeks ago. That's been shared on our website. I have communicated.
With all due respect, I've just received information from Indigenous communities that says they have not been informed of the deep water monitoring that the AER is conducting.
Representatives from the Northwest Territories were also present at Monday's committee meeting, including Assembly of First Nations Regional Chief Gerald Antoine, who had this to say.
We are very concerned that the Dene were not informed about this disastrous incident and the obvious health and environmental risks associated with the leaks and also spills. This is indeed an emergency.
We'll see each other on Thursday afternoon.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
For the first time, the city of Halifax celebrated Earth Day, led by the Mi'kmaq grandmothers and water protectors. Angel Moore reports.
Many people have taken for granted the water, thinking it will always be there when they turn on a tap.
That's Doreen Bernard, Mi'kmaq grandmother and water protector, opening the People's Parade for Life on Earth. Hundreds joined in the Earth Day celebration along the Jabuktuk, also known as Halifax waterfront. Led by the Mi'kmaq grandmothers and water protectors, Zachary Paul, a water walker, says water is life.
The people realize that water needs to come first. And you know, as water walkers and water protectors, we try to tell that message out to people. You know, we need clean water for everyone to live. We need clean water for our relatives, the swimmers, the four-legged, the winged, everybody.
Partnered with the Ecology Action Centre, an environmental organization, Maggie Burns speaks for the group.
The reason that we're here is because we all love this planet so much, and it needs us. It needs us to love it, and it needs us to come together in that feeling of both grief and hope and joyful rebellion.
Over 35 community groups participated, including wildlife, enjoying the walk along the waterfront. Notably, one domesticated animal, a hen.
I think I'm probably the least local of the animals featured, but I like to think that it's because we're encouraging backyard chickens.
First time as a hen puppet, Volunteer Finch Van Bell says the puppets promote food security.
One of the initiatives that the Ecology Action Centre has worked on is the Halifax Just Food Plan. And that is a massive policy plan to encourage food sustainability in the HRM. So one of those things, among many, is encouraging backyard gardening and backyard chicken keeping.
The parade ended at the Peace and Friendship Park with activities for the youth and a celebration of Mother Earth. Bernard hopes next Earth Day will be bigger.
So this is the first one we had in the city, and I think it's just going to grow from there. It was amazing. Such an uplifting day. Happy Mother Earth Day.
This was the first celebration of Earth Day in Jabuktuk. Organizers hope more people will get involved next year. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabuktuk, known as Halifax.
A judicial review on a mining project opposed by First Nations in Yukon wrapped up earlier this week, and there are serious environmental concerns with the project. Here's Sarah Connors with more.
Kutsakaya is a proposed mine located 115 kilometers south of the community of Ross River. The Ross River Dene Council, representing the Kaska Nation, says their concerns are not being heard by the federal and territorial governments. Kaska First Nations in the Yukon have raised serious environmental concerns about the project, especially its impact on the Finlayson caribou herd. In 2022, territorial and federal decision makers advanced the project to the next stage. But the Ross River Dene Council argued they weren't properly consulted about that decision. That's why they launched a judicial review about the matter on behalf of the Kaska Nation. Their views are shared by the Pelly Banks government, an unrecognized First Nation. They claim they've never been formally consulted about the project and want their views to be heard.
Until they do that, they don't belong in our backyard. We don't want them back there. Our people don't want them back there.
This is a case about proper consultation, and Pelly Banks government has never been brought to the table. Win, lose, or draw today, we win already by taking a stand.
Pelly Banks is in the same boat. We're going to be losing a lot of things that is meaningful for us. So, like the animals, the hunting.
A final decision on the case is expected later this summer. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
A sacred site near Winnipeg used for healing programs and traditional ceremonies was burglarized for the second time in just 2 weeks. Here's Sav Jones with more.
That was damaged. That's damaged.
Wayne Mason Sr. surveys the damage left at a healing lodge site just west of Winnipeg after burglars stole sacred items, tools, and vandalized the property.
There were some 6 missing tarps, and they're quite expensive. The canvas that you use on the sweat lodges. And there's a weed eater gone, some tools, different all kinds of things that we use out on the land here.
Mason is the executive director of Wasay Healing Center, an organization that provides wellness services and programming to residential school survivors and their community. He says smeared blood was found throughout the scene, possibly from an injury relating to the break-in.
Well, yesterday I was angry, and then I was depressed, why would somebody do something like this to us? We work so hard all the time to help people, and this is what we get.
This is the second theft to happen in just 2 weeks. The first saw 30 sheets of plywood stolen from the site, located at the end of a kilometer-long dirt road in a provincial park. He says gates and security cameras may be installed to prevent another loss.
That's too bad, eh? Limiting people access this land. If people were respectful, they wouldn't come and damage and cause us to put up cameras,
Mason says other Indigenous organizations and the provincial government have offered to help rebuild the site.
Look at all those organizations that offered to come and help. That'd be good. As soon as it dries up a little bit, we'll have a little gathering here, and we'll do ceremonies.
Mason says he doesn't know why someone would steal from their sacred lodge site, but that material items can always be replaced.
I feel sorry for somebody that does something like that, because it's going to come back at them, I don't have to do anything about it. The Creator will look after that.
Sav Jonesa, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
RCMP in the northern town of The Paw, Manitoba are investigating a suspected tainted drug supply which led to the hospitalization of numerous people. 4 men were found unresponsive Saturday night in The Paw. RCMP believe the men took drugs, possibly ecstasy, believed to be laced with an opioid. Naloxone was given to the 4 by EMS and RCMP. 3 of the 4 were revived and taken to hospital. They were treated and released. The 4th man was also taken to hospital but was later flown to Brandon, and he is in critical condition. Hours later, Saturday night, RCMP received word of 2 more overdoses at the same location. These men were also treated in hospital and released. RCMP are warning the community of a dangerous drug circulating in the area. It is described as a purple crystal-like powder which may contain fentanyl.
But we're realistic at the same time that we know what's out there. The best we can try and do is advise the public on the warnings of this potentially lethal concoction of perhaps it's an ecstasy or a methamphetamine. Either way, it's just dangerous to consume.
All right, we have to pause our news show for a moment. We still have plenty more news to come. Stay with us. Welcome back to APTN National News. A few details are available about an incident at the Dene building on the Laloche Community School campus in northwest Saskatchewan that injured 2 people. La Loche Mayor Georgina Jolibois told the Canadian Press on Friday that a student and staff member were stabbed and another student was in custody. RCMP in Saskatchewan acknowledged the incident, saying the matter is under investigation. The search for a missing 65-year-old Indigenous man in Thunder Bay has been suspended. The Thunder Bay police say the search that started several days ago did not turn up any new leads. Police spokesperson Scott Parody says police plan to conduct more searches once more snow melts. They've recently been assisted by the Ontario Provincial Police. Canine units from both services were also deployed. Lawson was last seen November the 27th, and his family says there's been no activity on his bank account, health, or his status card. The Métis Nation of Alberta managed to get some dental work done for its members in the Cold Lake region last week. Our Chris Stewart drills into this story.
Paulette Dalside is a dental hygienist. Last week, she was working with the Métis Nation of Alberta to provide dental services in Cold Lake, Alberta, which is in the MNA's Region 2.
Our Métis citizens are traveling 3, 4, 5 hours to be able to access these sort of really tailored, meeting our distinct needs sort of environments. And so the community overall, you keep hearing the same thing over again. When is this happening again? How do we make this happen again? You know, these services are so needed.
Services like getting a tooth filled or a good tooth cleaning.
Having a clinic like this that comes into our community where the community can then wrap around and create this holistic, really community-driven, safe atmosphere, it means a world of change for so many people.
Is joining us on this trip.
Adam McCourt is a fourth-year dental student. He is part of the Access for All mobile dental clinic at the University of Alberta.
We did our trip in Lac La Biche in the fall, so in November. That was also a week long, and that was our first trip that we had done. We called it a pilot trip. There's still lots to learn, so I think we're going to call this one a pilot trip too, but it's been going really well. Comparing it to Lac La Biche, we added an operatory now that we're a little more organized and have things figured out. So we've been able to see more patients this week, and it's been amazing.
And it wasn't just dental work. There were activities, jigging in the evenings, and more. It offered a chance to catch up with friends and have fun. Reagan Bartel is the Director of Health for the Métis Nation of Alberta. She says this clinic was another success and that it proves that the MNA can be a self-government.
So the other thing about this clinic is that it is evidence that the Métis Nation can take care of themselves. So when we're given the capacity, be it prioritization or funding, our federal partners, our provincial partners need to look at these clinics as models for the way that Métis people can govern and self-determine their own health priorities.
Kirk Johnson says his brother warned him that getting a filling was going to hurt.
I was a bit anxious at first, but once I got in there and they started doing it, I was fine and all the anxiety went away. I could thank Paulette and the two dentists in there that did the filling of my tooth and the Métis community.
Over 85 people were treated during the week-long clinic. More clinics are scheduled to be run in November. Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Cold Lake, Alberta.
The chiefs of the 13 Mi'kmaq First Nations in Nova Scotia have signed a memorandum of understanding with the federal and provincial governments to begin the transfer of health services to the Mi'kmaq. Once again, here's Angel Moore with the details.
A celebration as the 13 chiefs sign a memorandum of understanding to transfer federal health services to the Mi'kmaq. Chief Andrea Paul signed on for Pictou Landing First Nation.
We have a voice in healthcare, and we can now lead the way in transforming and making sure that the programs that are being delivered are the ones that we need, not the ones that are being told we need.
The transfer will be handled by Judge Gumick, a health and wellness organization. Judge Gumick Director Sharon Rutterham says the transfer of service to Mi'kmaq Control will go a long ways to alleviate disparities within the mainstream system.
Dramatic differences in our mortality, our health and chronic health conditions, from mental health to cardiovascular to every category there is in cancer. You know, we have higher rates of health issues that are facing our Mi'kmaq communities.
The federal government is committing $15 million over the next 3 years to develop the transfer. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu says the process will lead to better health care for the Mi'kmaq.
You know, services that are designed by Indigenous people and delivered by Indigenous people have the ability to better reflect the needs of the people they're serving. And
the transfer is expected to be completed over 7 years. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Millbrook First Nation.
Well, it took 4 years, but Nova Scotia RCMP have charged a former employee of the Millbrook Mi'kmaq Nation with allegedly misappropriating millions of dollars. RCMP say the misappropriation occurred between January of 2016 and December of 2019 and have charged Don Ellis Abbott with fraud over $5,000, theft over $5,000, and possession of property obtained by crime over $5,000. In 2019, the Millbrook First Nation first reported a possible fraud, then believed to be in excess of $1 million. The RCMP investigated and determined it was actually over $4 million. Ellis Abbott will appear in provincial court on May the 24th in Truro, Nova Scotia. None of the allegations have been proven in court. All right, it's time to take one more short pause here on the program. When we come back, we had some very special visitors at APTN Headquarters today. We'll tell you who next. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. This weekend, many across Turtle Island were treated to some northern lights. Toby Wilson took this picture from Norway House, located in northern Manitoba. Thanks so much, Toby. If you have a great photo, maybe it's of the northern lights, you can send it to share@aptn.ca and it might just be our next photo of the day. All right, now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. We begin on the east coast of 5 degrees in St. John's and clear and 13 in Halifax. 6 in Cartwright, and 5 in Coujawag. 8 degrees in Quebec City and 11 in Montreal. 10 degrees in Toronto and 4 in North Bay. 2 degrees in Wawa and 3 in Big Trout Lake. -4 in Churchill and clear and 6 in God's Lake. 4 in Barons River and 7 in Winnipeg. Regina's looking at 6 degrees and 15 in Saskatoon. 8 degrees in Buffalo Narrows and 10 in Stony Rapids. As we make our way west, 7 in Fort Chipewyan and 9 in Peace River. 14 degrees in Edmonton and 17 in Calgary. 12 degrees in Campbell River and 13 in Bella Coola. Smithers is looking at 9 degrees and Fort Nelson's looking at 9 degrees as well. 3 in Beaver Creek and -9 in Old Crow. -8 in Norman Wells and -5 in Fort Simpson. -12 in some sun and cloud in Inuvik and -11 in snow in Colville Lake. -3 in Cambridge Bay and -8 in Chesterfield. Clear and -10 in Arctic Bay and clear and -6 in Aglulik. A delegation of Whakata Maori from New Zealand came to visit APTN HQ in Winnipeg today.
The day opened with a welcoming song, smudging, and speeches, carried through with cultural events. The broadcaster, formerly known as Maori Television, promotes Maori culture and language through educational and entertaining programming. Maori are the original peoples of New Zealand.
Thank you and acknowledge the beautiful welcome that we have received this morning, and I acknowledge the Indigenous peoples in Canada, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit.
Shane Tarima is CEO of Whakata Māori.
Now, I understand that APTN delivers content in about 20 Indigenous languages, which I think is very impressive. It's difficult trying to deliver content in one Indigenous language, let alone 20 or more. So I take my hat off to APTN and the work that it does, and I acknowledge the challenge that lies therein to try and be able to do that.
Both organizations are a part of the World Indigenous Television Broadcasters Network, or WITBIN, which includes countries like Taiwan, Australia, and Norway. This visit comes after the December 2022 visit from APTN in New Zealand. Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And we certainly look forward to working with everyone in Whitby, hopefully more in the future. All right, that's all we have for you tonight on APTN National News. If you missed any of our show tonight, you can head to aptnnews.ca and catch up there. We leave you with some Métis jigging tonight, so there's that for you. For all of us here, thank you so much for joining us. Miigwech, Kinanaskmatin. Have a great night.